Well, hello everyone and welcome back to my channel where we are doing Mpesa Daraja API using Django and React Native to make real-world mobile applications for both Android and iOS. In the last lesson, we looked at what is client to pay bill and also the differences between C2B and the Lipa na Mpesa online. And those are some of the differences that we'll be expecting forward as we build our application. So in this tutorial, we'll be looking at registering our URL, since we said that it's going to be the first step before we do a client to pay bill. So let's jump straight into our code. So I've opened up here the folder that we've been working on, and I've also opened up VS Code. So the first thing I'm going to do is to, of course, activate our virtual environment. So I'm going to come here, cd into the virtual environment in the scripts folder. Then I run activate, and I go back to the Daraja folder. This is where this folder is. So for C2B, I'm going to come here and create a new file. I'm going to call it C2B.py. So for now, we'll have three files: C2B, keys.py. Remember, keys.py is where we stored all our secret information, and we also have the Lipa na Mpesa, which we're working on. So I'm going to close that one. So to get the code for C2B, I'm going to come here to developer portal, and I'm going to come to the docs at C2B. Scroll down. So the first code sample that we have here is for registering our URL, because remember yesterday we said we must first register our confirmation URL, which is this one, and also our validation URL, then we do the C2B. So I'm going to copy this, come back to our text editor, and I'm going to paste that. So it's saying here we import request, which we've already done. Remember, we installed the request when we were doing Lipa na Mpesa. We need the access token, and in the Lipa na Mpesa.py, we had this function here that was calculating the access token. The API URL is that one. Our header parameters is that one. So for the request, we require here a shortcode. We require a response type, confirmation URL, and validation URL. So the response type, I have to go to the docs and check what that is. This is, they're saying, is the default response type for timeout. Let's see. I can't seem to find the explanation for this, so I'm going to come to the APIs, C2B, register URL, and I see what that means. So they are saying the response type, this parameter specifies what is to happen if for any reason the validation URL is not reachable. Note that this is the default action value that determines what Mpesa will do in the scenario that your endpoint is unreachable or is unable to respond in time. Only two values are allowed: completed or cancelled. Okay, so basically what response type means, remember in the previous video, let me open up the slides. Remember, in this process, we said that when Mpesa is processing your request, it's going to send you some information to your validation URL, which we are supposed to do some validation with. We can either accept a payment or reject, or check some few things to see if we can accept or reject the payment. So what response type means, it means for any reason, if Safaricom is unable to reach your validation URL, because let's say, for example, your server is down, or maybe your website is down, or for some reason maybe you coded your URLs wrong, or there's an error in your own system, what is Safaricom supposed to do? Does it go ahead and accept the payment on your behalf, or does it cancel? So for example, in the example that we did in the previous video, you saw there was a company that we needed to pay 1,160 shillings. And so if we send, and we said that if, for example, if we send like 1,000 bob, they can decide inside their own validation URL, the company can decide to cancel or accept the payment. But imagine for some reason, maybe their system is down, because that can happen. So what is Safaricom supposed to do? So in this case, if you put cancelled, Safaricom will automatically cancel all transactions that come to you until such a point where your URLs are working correctly, or they can contact your URL, validation URL, or completed. If you put completed, then it will mean if Safaricom tries to reach your validation URL and it can't reach you, then it will go ahead and complete the transaction for you. The shortcode is the business shortcode of the organization. So coming back to the code, so here we'll say in our case, if Safaricom cannot reach this URL, I'm going to go ahead and say completed. Of course, in this case, I know it's not going to reach this URL, the validation URL, because it's non-existent. So here, one of the differences between this shortcode, and remember lipa na mpesa.py, it asks us a business shortcode, and we said is the business shortcode in our test credentials. But when you are doing C2B, whether it's registering or the actual transaction, this shortcode is not this business shortcode. And I'm going to go to my test credentials. So here, remember we said we have a shortcode 1, shortcode 2, and a lipa na mpesa online shortcode, and this is what we used in the lipa na mpesa. But now for C2B, we'll be using shortcode 1. Okay. So I'm going to come and open my keys.py. Remember, in this list we have not put the shortcode, so I'm going to say shortcode is equals to, and I'm going to copy my shortcode and paste it there. Okay, make sure that I save the file. So coming now to the C2B, I'm going here to import the keys file, just like we did with lipa na mpesa, and in the shortcode I'm going to say keys dot, we've called it shortcode. Okay, so this is pretty much done. The only thing we don't have is the access token. Now there's two ways we can do this. We can do it the long way, or we can do it the short way. The long way is where we come, remember we had found a way of generating the access token, and we used these lines of code. So for now, let me just copy them, although towards the end of this video I'll show you how we can refactor the code so that we do not repeat ourselves. So but for the purposes of explaining, I'm going to come here and copy this code where we take the consumer key from this file and the consumer secret, we send it to this URL, and the access token, which we are calling my access token, we are going to get it from this response that we get. So here I'm going to say cancel this, and I'm going to take this value of my access token and put it here. So then I'm going to come here and just to make this clean, I'm going to create a function, define, I can call it, this is register URL, I can call it register URL, and like that. I'm going to tab this in. Okay, so then here I come and say just come here and say register URL to call the function. Okay, so then I'll come here and run this Python file in terminal. And most of the time, and this is something that really bothered me for quite a while before I could understand, it tells me here an error that maximum retries exceeded with URL, this URL, and it's telling me that a connection attempt failed because the connection party did not properly respond after a period of time. So what is happening is that we are trying to send information to sandbox.safaricom.co.ke, which is here, but it's not going through. And so one of the things that I came to notice is that if you come to the documentation, you come here, it's saying here http:/this. Notice here it's a HTTP and not a HTTPS, and that's why even for my URLs here I said I changed mine to HTTPS. And in the previous videos I've been insisting that all our URLs must be HTTPS going forward. And if I come to the C2B here, it's written HTTPS. So I'm going to come here and change this URL to HTTPS and not what was written here. Probably it was a typo. So let's save and let's try to do this again. So it's running down here, and yes, and now you can see here we've received a success, and that is the response that we needed. So we've successfully registered our 2 URLs with Safaricom, but now we now can go ahead and do a C2B. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back here to the docs again, and I'm going to go down to this C2B simulate transaction, and I'm now going to copy this. And once we've run a register URL, we do not need to run this again because Safaricom has now registered it. We just need to run it once and make sure it's written success. So I'm going to copy this code here below. We don't need to import request anymore because we've already imported it. Again, guys, sorry for this. My extension code black keeps popping up, giving me errors. So ignore that. So I'm going to come here and say def to define a function, simulate transaction. I'm going to say C2B, so that if we call this function from another file, we know what we are doing. And again, I tab all that in. So to simulate this transaction, we need an access token. So for this one, since we've already calculated here the access token and we've called it my access token, I'm just going to bring it here. The API URL is that one. The headers parameter is that one. So this, I can delete this instead of repetition and just say my access token there. So when it comes to the request body, we need a shortcode, and this is the shortcode we've just put. So it's keys.shortcode and not business shortcode. So this takes the same as the register URL. Command ID is customer pay bill online, because remember guys, we said we can either have customer pay bill online or customer buy goods online. In this case, we are using customer pay bill online. We want to pay some amount, so I'm going to say, for example, 2 shillings. Then it asks us for a phone number here. So I'm going to come to the documentation, and it says here MSISDN or the phone number sending the transaction. Start with the country code without the plus sign, and if we come here to the APIs, it says this is for register URL. So let me go back to C2B, and we are in the simulate transaction. I want to show you guys something. So it's saying this is the phone number initiating the C2B transaction. So one of the differences that I forgot to mention is that in the Lipa na Mpesa, we were using our own phone number, because when we run the Lipa na Mpesa function, it sent the details to our phone number. But since this is a C2B, we are trying to simulate the manual process. So we cannot hence use our own phone number, guys. We cannot use our own phone number. So if you come back to the test credentials, I'm just going to open up my test credentials in a new page. That is developer.co.ke/test_credentials. It's not loading. Let's see. Okay, I'll just come in getting started. I don't know why that never opened. And I'm going to come here to, let's see, register you. We are at C2B. So MSISDN, this is the test phone number of the virtual customer, because here we are using a virtual customer. We are using we are simulating a C2B. We are trying to simulate the process of somebody going to their mobile phone, to the SIM application and manually doing it. So we are told here to use the one given in our test credentials section. So if we open our test credentials, you realize there was a phone number here that we are given, test MSISDN, and we were given this number. So this is the number we'll use when simulating a C2B. Of course, when we go live, now this phone number will be now phone number of other people trying to send you the money. So this is the number we need. So instead of just copying it, I'm going to come back to my keys.py, and I'm going to say here test MSISDN, and I'm going to paste in that number. So now when we come to this one, I'm going to say now it's keys.test MSISDN. B reference number. So this can be either like an invoice number, it can be anything. It can be either like an invoice, it can be like it can be also be like the account number. So for this one, I'll say, let's say I say it's 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. Maybe it's an ID number. So it seems we have everything set. So I'm going to come here and say to call this function simulate C2B transaction. Let's go and see if everything is there. We have the access token, we have the shortcode, it's customer pay bill and not customer buy goods. We are sending 2 shillings. The phone number is the test phone number that we've been given, which we've saved in this keys.py file, and a bill reference number is like an invoice number, whatever. So, and we are going in future to use this when you're doing validation. So let me save this and go ahead and run it and see. So I'm running it, and here you see we've gotten a success. The service has been accepted successfully. So if we come to the slides, so we've effectively just done that. We've simulated the response here, and we've just received the acknowledgement. But in every transaction that we've been doing, what we've not been receiving is the data to a validation URL, because we don't have an actual URL that we can go and see the information Safaricom is sending. And of course, we also don't have a confirmation URL. I mean, we've registered it, but we don't have access to that. And there's a lot of information that Safaricom is sending in between, which we are not seeing because we don't have the URLs. So in the next video, we'll be looking at how to do these confirmation URLs and validation URLs using Django, and how we can now access and validate these transactions. But coming back to our code here, we realize that it's a bit messy, and it's a bit messy because you find, like, for example, here we have code for access token. In Lipa na Mpesa we have the same code. In here in C2B we have like 2 functions, one which is doing registering and one that is doing simulate. So going back to the slides, we need to look at what is called code refactoring, and it's good we start refactoring our code. It's good that we start refactoring and reorganizing our code to make it more readable and to put them in separate folders and files. And so let's take a quick look at how we can refactor our code. So far you see that we've already done for consumer key and consumer secret, because in the previous video we put them in the keys.py file. You realize now we are generating access token in every transaction, which is not supposed to be the case. So in this video, let's go quickly and refactor access token. And we can call it whatever we want. I'm going just to call it generate access token. Again, guys, stick with this naming convention. It's the Pythonic way of doing it. And I'm going to do this. So, but here, because we'll be exporting this, we will be importing this function in other files. Instead of coming here and saying generate access token, what I'm going to do is here we can say return my access token. Cool. So whenever we import this function in another file, it's going to run this and return this value. Okay. So let's see, everything is okay. So I'm supposed we can do this with Lipa na Mpesa. So I'm going to come here, and instead of this, I'm going to say to cancel all that. We don't need it. And instead of saying, I'm going to say my access token is equals to this function, we first need to import it. So I'm going to come up here and say from access token, which is this file, import generate access token. So and I'm going to put this up there because I'm following you know, it's alphabetical order of importing things. So here I'm going to come and say it's my access token is the same as this function. So here my access token is going to equal to generate access token, and when it runs this function, it's going to return this value just to test if it works. So I'm going to come here and print my access token, and I say this should be an access token, and of course this function should run. So I'm going to come and run this. It's supposed to say success. You see now the function is still running, and now here it's way cleaner. So even instead of having my access token outside here, the function, and also initiating it inside, I can just come and copy this generate access token and put it here, and then I can delete this too. Okay, so you see this is much cleaner, and if we run it again, it's a success. So we've cleaned up a lot of junk code there. So to do the same with C2B, I'm going to come here. We don't need now to do all this again, so I'm going to cancel all that. We don't need that. So here when it says my access token, so I'm going to come here and say my access token is equals to generate access token, and we need to import this. So I'm going to say here again from access token import generate access token, and cool. So we've just replaced all that code with that, and again okay, we don't need to run register URL again, but it should work. So here in simulate, again I will only copy this line and paste it inside here. So and if we run this file again, Control Shift P, and run Python file in terminal, we should also get a success. Just give it a second. Again, service accepted. So we've cleaned up the access token generation. Another thing that we can do is that instead of having both simulate C2B transaction and register URL, you can even put this in another file if you want to. In this case I won't, because again we only run this once. So another thing that we can here come and refactor is this function. So we have here a function that is encoding and decoding to create a password. So remember, we were taking three things: the business shortcode, Lipa na Mpesa passkey, and formatted time, and encoding it. So what we can do is I can create another file here, and I'm going to call it encode.py. Again, you can call it whatever you want, like password.py, but okay, that's a cliche name. So just maybe use encode or decode. So then I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to bring it here, and I'm going to put this in a function. So I say define generate password, and I'm going to tab all this in. So here we need to import a few things. We need to import keys, so I'll say import keys. Again, we are doing this for the password generation for Lipa na Mpesa. We need to import base 64, so I'm going to come import base 64, put a space there. What do we need else? Okay, so here we need to pass in formatted time. So remember here we were getting formatted time from another function. So the way we can do this is that we can allow our generate function to take in I'm going to put here time or formatted time. Again, this name you can give it anything, and when we pass in, when we are going to run this function, and we must pass in a time, a formatted time, so that it can generate. So here I'm going to return the decoded password. Okay, cool. And make sure we spell it correctly. This is return decoded, and I can cut that out. Okay, so this is done. But so when I come here to Lipa na Mpesa, instead of all this, I can say decoded password is equals to, I'm going to first, okay, let me close this. I'm first going to import this. So I'm going to come to Lipa na Mpesa, and I say from encode. So it's going to come here from encode import. Again, you can import this anywhere on the top. I like just doing alphabetical order imports to make my work easier later on when I'm coming to look for functions and imported functions. So from encode import, we've called it generate password. So instead of all this, I can cancel all that, and I say decoded password is equals to generate password, and this one takes in one function, which is, it takes in one value, which is a formatted time. So I can pass in a formatted time, which in this case will be this time here. So it is going to be passed here, and let's see if it works. So I'm going to run again this one and run Python file in terminal. Again, it's a success. We can go further and now take this to another file. So I'm going to come here and call I'm going to create a new file, and for this one we can call it like format time, or we can give it a name. So because down the line we are going to have a lot of other formatting, whether it's time, whether it's data or phone number. So for example, one of the things we'll be doing in the future tutorials is how if somebody mistakenly gives you like a 0718 and you want to convert it to a 254, or somebody, maybe if you are reading contacts from our phone and it was saved as +254, how do we convert? So for now, I can just create a file called utils.py, where we'll be writing random functions that helps us to convert things or do other things. So I'm going to paste, I need to copy this, so I'm going to copy that and I'm going to paste it here. So again, as usual, we create a file and I'm going to call this convert. I'm going to call, what do we call it, dev convert time. I know it's not a good name, but for now let's just use that. I do not need to I don't need that, and I don't need that. So when this no, I'm going to call it def get timestamp, because again we are doing this to get the timestamp. So I'm going to get unformatted time, which is datetime.now. So we need to from datetime import datetime. Yeah, so that's okay. So then I'm going to return this formatted time. Okay, cool. So that's okay. So I'm going to import this function from here. So I'm going to say from, we've called it utils, so it comes here. So from utils import get timestamp, and so instead of all this, I'll say formatted time is equals to get timestamp, and we run that function. So then we don't need that, we actually also don't need that. And also some of the things that we had imported here like datetime we don't need because we are not using it anywhere. We're also not using base64 anywhere in this file. Let's see, yeah, we don't need that as well. So we only need these two things. Let's see, anything else we've imported which we don't need? No, we need everything else. So you can see guys, so if I come here and now I run this again, we should get a success as well. Again we get a success, and you can see now this is what refactoring is. Now our code is very neat. So for Lipa na Mpesa we only need to import formatted time, and by the way you can come even here and put this function. I can even come here and put these two functions inside the Lipa na Mpesa. So we can put them here, just make sure I indent them correctly like that. So we've cancelled everything and literally just made these 3 lines and replace all the junk that we had. So if I now run this again just to do a final run to make sure everything works, we should also get a success. Again we get a success. So this is what refactoring is all about, and we can see now for the Lipa na Mpesa we've replaced everything with these 3 lines and put all the functions and all the code in other files. It's similar to C2B. So for here I believe this is okay. Yeah, for C2B everything is okay. So now that we've finalized on that one, let's go ahead and push the code to GitHub. So there's 2 ways of doing it. Again I said we can go the old school way where I say git status. Of course now we'll see we have modified Lipa na Mpesa because we had already saved this file once. If you go back to that video, and you can see here we also have untracked files because some of them we've just created them today. So we'll have, when we go to save, they are going actually to create them in Git. So again, so this method we've already done it, but I want also guys to show you like another easier way of doing it. So if you come to VS Code, you come here to this which is showing a Git branch. We'll see we have some files here that we've changed. So for access token, I'm going to click plus here, stage changes. So staging changes is like saying git add. Okay, so then I come and say message, and I'll say added for this is access token, and if you click on it you'll see the changes you've made. So in this case it's the first time we are creating it, so everything here is new, but I'll say we've added an access token, this function. Again, this is now equivalent of saying git add, then git commit -m with a message. So then you click on the tick, it goes. So then we have the C2B. I'm going to click plus to git add, and I'm going now to add. You can see now it comes from changes to staged changes. Yes, to staged changes. And for C2B again, we've added, again this one you can describe it however you want. We've added register URL and simulate C2B transaction. I'm going to click OK. We have encode, and encode we've added again you can write whatever description you want. Added that function, and you can even, if you don't want to go in each file and write what you've changed for future reference, you can just come here and say git add dot, and it's going to select everything, and you can just have one common message, and you can say like today is 27th, you can say 27th February changes, and so each file will have that as a message. But let's just do it the hard way and the long way, because down the line when you are doing our versioning it comes very helpful. So for keys.py, I'm going to add it and say added test. Today we've added test MSISDN. Okay. For Lipa na Mpesa, we've done some refactoring. So if you can come now to Mpesa, if you click it right here, you'll see the changes we've made. So the first commit we ever did was welcome to Fullstack Django, and now these are all the changes we've made. Again, the reason we didn't see like a red screen, which is this, and the green screen of what we have now, is because the other files is we've not uploaded them to Git. But with time, you will find that when you are coming here to unchange a few lines and you're coming to commit, you will see the exact lines you've done and the history of what used to be there. So here I'm going to come and put a plus and say added Lipa na Mpesa. I can even say added and refactored. Okay, then utils, I'm going to come and say I've added this, and I'm going to show you the importance of going each file and just writing. It takes time, and I don't need to update my settings.json. So the next thing after we've committed writing the message, remember we must always push. So I say push to origin. So that's the equivalent of coming here and saying git push origin master. If I now come to my GitHub, to Daraja tutorials, let's wait for it to upload. I'm sure it's still uploading the files. Again, as it uploads, guys, it's very important that we put things in separate folders, because now let's say if there's a problem with access tokens, I can come to this folder, to this file, and in this file I'm only dealing with access tokens. So it will become very helpful when you're trying to locate problems and do troubleshooting, because everything is in different locations and not localized. When we had everything in one file, it becomes so very difficult to know where the problems are. So here it's still trying to upload. So I think it has finished uploading, so I'm going to come and refresh. So and now notice that all our files are there, and we've ignored some of the folders like the VNV folder. So if you now come here, like now you see, like when I'm now going through my code, I can be able to tell that there's a file called Lipa na Mpesa, and the last thing that I did on it was to add and refactor Lipa na Mpesa. I can even come and click on Lipa na Mpesa. I can see the code that we've just written. I can come to history, and I can see the first time I committed was on February 18th, and now I have this, and I can click on it, and I can see that this color here, and I'm colorblind, I think it's what is it, like a orangish color, it signifies the lines that we've removed, and you can see it's a minus because initially we had just written print welcome to Fullstack Django in the first tutorial, and now the green lines are all the lines that we've added. So with time, as we are doing additions and removing stuff, you realize that you can now be able to track changes. And one of the most important things to do is that if let's say we do a commit and we realize that we've made a mistake, we can always come back to an initial state of the code that we had. So guys, I'm just going to leave you with this code that I like, and it always says that always code as if the guy who ends up maintaining your code will be a violent psychopath who knows where you live. And basically what this means is that we must write code keeping in mind that whoever will be reading it in future or reviewing it is also a human being, and so we need to clean up our code. We need to arrange it in the correct way, and going forward this will be a primary form of writing code. So guys, again, if you're finding me for the first time, please go ahead and subscribe, and also hit on the notification bell, because I'll be dropping this video at sporadic times. And again, thank you so much for following on this tutorial series. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.